what was called Transjordan and later called Jordan was described in Article 25 as Eastern Palestine, and the British saw this as a solution to the problem of Abdullah and to keep its relations with France on a favorable basis.
80 years have passed since the mandate was passed, and also 60 years since the State of Israel was founded. Facts on the ground have changed.
Yes.
What can realistically be done today to ensure Israel having its rights recognized in Israeli territory?
Okay. Well, nothing could be done in regard to Transjordan unless there is a radical change of circumstances. We have to accept the situation as it is now, although we should never concede the fact that we don't have rights there. We have rights, but they're dormant, and they can't be exercised unless there's a radical change of circumstances. But the problem here is with regard to Judea and Samaria. These are integral areas of the Jewish national home, and unfortunately in 1992, Prime Minister Rabin decided to bring the arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat from Tunisia to set up an administration in Judea and Samaria. So today we're faced with the situation where the so-called Palestinian Authority controls about 42% of the land of Judea and Samaria, and we've already given up all of Gaza, as you know, through the actions of not only Rabin but Ariel Sharon. And so we're left with about 60%, less than 60% of the area of Judea and Samaria. What can be done is that this area should have been incorporated into the State of Israel. As a matter of fact, this was required by Israeli constitutional law. There is a law known as the Area of Jurisdiction and Powers Ordinance, and there was a proclamation issued by Ben-Gurion in August 1948 for Jerusalem, and in September 1948 for the rest of the land of Israel, in which it stated that whenever the IDF takes possession of an area of the land of Israel, the law of the State of Israel must be applied to that area. That is how Beersheba, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Nahariya, Lod, Ramleh, and other areas came into the state, because under the UN partition resolution, these areas were not included. But during the War of Independence, they were conquered by the IDF, and they were made part of the state through this proclamation that Ben-Gurion issued, and he issued it even before the statute was passed. The statute was the Area of Jurisdiction and Powers Ordinance, but after applying the law of the state, both the statute and the law, the Land of Israel Proclamation was made retroactive to May 15, 1948, which from a legal point of view settled the whole question. This law was enforced on June 7, 1967, when the IDF entered Judea and Samaria and Gaza, and it should have been applied. But 3 weeks after the liberation of these areas, the State of Israel, the Knesset passed a new law, an amendment to Section 11 of the Law and Administration Ordinance, which gave the government a choice whether or not to apply the law. But they never repealed the earlier law, namely the Area of Jurisdiction and Powers Ordinance. This law still remains on the books. It should have been invoked on June 7, 1967, but for two reasons it wasn't. For the reason that they wanted to keep the door of peace open with the neighboring Arab states, but the more important reason, which was not stated, was the demographic reason. They did not want to bring into the state hundreds of thousands of Arabs that they thought they would have to give them citizenship. And they didn't want to upset the demographic balance. So, but in actual fact, the State of Israel has been acting illegally ever since this time because they did not apply the existing constitutional law. That law that I mentioned just a moment ago was obligatory. It had to be enforced. It wasn't. Even though they passed an alternative law, by keeping the original law on the books, they were still bound by its terms.
So in closing, where do we go from here? What can be done?
Well, the government of Israel should assert its rights to the land, and it doesn't do that. The United States is bullying Israel on the question of settlements and on the establishment of a so-called Arab-Palestinian state, and doesn't make a proper defense. This is the reason why I've advocated a legal action to be taken against the United States government for violating our rights to Judea and Samaria, and Gaza, of course, because the United States recognized Jewish rights, and those rights are still in force. Of course, only if there was no State of Israel, the rights would cease to exist. Since the right of Jewish settlement since it was recognized in American law, it should be actionable in an American court by an American citizen who lives in Judea and Samaria. The other thing is that because the United States is a country of checks and balances and separate branches of government, independent branches of government, Israel, faced with a hostile Obama administration, can appeal to the U.S. Congress for support, and that's the political route. I though advocate the legal route without saying that the political way can also be followed. I mean, you can do both the legal and the political ways to ensure our rights to the land.
Okay, Attorney Howard Greif, author of the Legal Foundation, Borders of Israel Under International Law. Thank you for joining us.